This video is for Ensure a Safe Workplace, Assessment 2, WHS Scenario. First thing to need to do is under the Ensure a Safe Workplace unit, scroll down to the assessment block. Down the bottom here is Assessment 2, the scenario. The first link here is for the sample risk assessment forms. When you click on that, this is what it will open up over here. And the risk assessment matrix, when you click on that, this will open up. You'll need both of these two documents in order to complete this task. So the scenario is all about biotech chemicals. If you read through this scenario here, it will give you all the different hazards and risks that you'll need to fill in for this column here. The first task is to identify the hazards and risks at biotech chemical and provide solutions by completing a risk assessment matrix. So the first thing to do over here is to type in all of the different hazards or risks that you found within the scenario. For this example, I'm just going to put car crash. And then the next bit you need to do is go in there to the matrix and work out what the consequence would be if there was a car crash. Most likely it would be probably a minor or moderate injury, but the possibility is that death will happen. So we put that as a number 5, consequence rating. So the 5 comes from the front of the consequence title. The next bit is the likelihood rating. So we click in there, back over to the risk assessment matrix, looking at the likelihood from A to E of it happening. So A is almost certain to occur in most circumstances versus E, which may occur but only in rare and exceptional circumstances. So what we might do for this one is rate it probably possible and likely to occur at some time. So that would be the C for the likelihood rating. So you pop that in there like that. The next one is to calculate the risk level. So looking at the likelihood, C, run along here until you get to the consequence rating up the top of 5, which will bring us to an extreme rating, or X. So in here, we put in X. So to calculate that rating, you do need to do the likelihood here and the consequence, and then work out where they meet. So for this instance, it's extreme. Moving along, the next thing you need to do is identify the hierarchy of control measure that you'll use to manage this risk. Now to get this, you need to go to the second page over here of the matrix, which is down the bottom here, hierarchy of control, elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and personal protective equipment, or PPE. In this instance, probably the highest level that you could put in here would be engineering. In this case, you can't eliminate people having car crashes. There's not much you could do to substitute using a car. I doubt you'd be able to build a train station, for instance. So the next thing, the logical thing would be to do engineering controls. So in here, you type in engineering, and then you type in what it is that you're actually going to do for that engineering control. So in this case, construct a barrier or guard in front of biotech chemicals. Right, the next thing you need to do is then work out how effective that is by doing a new risk level. So back to the risk assessment matrix. Having the barrier there would probably reduce the consequence from catastrophic death down to probably maybe a major or a moderate for the biotech chemicals side of things anyway, probably not the person in the car as such, but at least it wouldn't come into the biotech chemicals warehouse. So if that was, let's say, major instead of catastrophic, and the likelihood of a crash coming through that barrier is probably very unlikely, so E, running along E to major, reduces the risk down to high. So we'll put our new risk level in there, high, H for high, and then under effective would say it was effective at reducing the risk level down to H. Then over here in the further risk treatments is where you list all of the remaining hierarchy of control measures that you could use in the future to further bring down that risk level to a more acceptable one. To do that, you again look back at the hierarchy of control here. What sort of other measures could you put in here to reduce that risk level? We could put in here some admin controls, such as training for all staff to complete emergency situation training. Oops. Okay. Then you might also identify a couple of other administrative controls, being some other procedures or practices, or consulting with the employees, or any of those sort of things. Once you've gone through all of the possible admin controls, you move down to the personal protective equipment controls. In this case, you could have PPE and allocate all staff PPE in case of a crash, for instance, and then the appropriate procedures to go with that. And then you'd keep going until you've written down all the possible PPE risk treatments in there as well. So this little area here can have multiple hierarchy of control measures. In fact, it should. If you over here in the hierarchy of control measure had elimination as your top hierarchy of control measure, and you should always go for the top one first, that means over here you could have plenty of room to do the other 4 hierarchy of control measures. So the higher you go here, the better, because it means that you're going to be more effective here, and you may not even need to get to this bit. Okay, so once you've completed all of that, you're going back down to the assessment, and you do start on task 2, which is based on the results from your risk assessment. So that's these things here that you've done here. You now need to write procedures that you could use. So you need to have a procedure for each one of those hierarchy of control measures, and then make sure that you have got one for each of the solution in the matrix. So you don't need to do a procedure for every solution. So a solution is one of these hierarchy of control measures. If you've set it once here and then again further down, you only need to do one procedure to cover both of those instances. Then the third task is to develop a detailed training and induction plan. And this is where you're listing all the staff members at Biotech Chemicals, who's doing which type of training, which you've identified from the risk assessment summary, and then what time frame they're going to be doing that in. So some staff members might do the training for the emergency situation in May, and some others might be doing it in March, for instance. And then finally, the last task is to provide a summary on the outlines of the aim of the WHS legislation at Biotech Chemical. So don't forget to list the responsibilities legislation places on employers as well. Okay, that's it.